groups. You asking up for any degrees? Has your
Wife told me to.
wife told you to?
I mean, I can take it off. I'm
No, it's up to you. I don't know.
No, I just
If Mary
wanted,
Helen wants you to wear a mask, then you
no, I
should.
just wanted to make sure of setting an example if there's anybody else around here.
I'm just gonna sit over here.
We did spread our chairs out.
We'll put him downstairs there.
Who are you?
He's playing with blocks.
Some people have just got to agitate.
Some people.
Some people.
I didn't make any names.
It's a biased term these days.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Southern Shores Council meeting for January the 4th. If you could all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I would ask you now to please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. I need an amendment, please, or if I would like to ask my fellow council members to get a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the December
I second
Oops,
agenda,
January 4th,
January 4th agenda.
2022. I don't think I said the year either
No.
when I said the.
I was
opening
looking at the
things.
consent agenda.
Yeah, consent agenda.
It had 20.
We have a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Do I have a second? Paula, you
Second.
did? Yes, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We have an agenda. We have a consent agenda, which consists of the minutes of the last meeting of December 7th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll start with our staff reports. Our Deputy Town Manager and Planning Director, Wes Haskett. Good evening, Wes.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of council also. Good evening. I have a brief report for y'all tonight for the month of December 2021. There were a total number of 31 permits issued. Those included 7 building permits, 7 zoning permits, 14 building permits, 5 trade permits, 4 lot disturbance stormwater management permits, and 1 lot disturbance demolition permit. The total amount of fees that the department collected in December was $12,409.50. And lastly, with respect to the planning board, they will be meeting here on Tuesday, January 18th at 5 p.m. And the purpose of the meeting is for them to continue discussing potential amendments to Town Code Chapter 26, solid waste. Very brief report, but y'all have any questions?
The total in the, is that year-to-date total? It's at all permit total, the far, for me, the far right column, it's 2,302,096.
Yes, sir. That's, if you go, yeah, that's the, let's see, no, excuse me, that's the total project cost, the value of the permits, the project cost values that they put on the applications. That's what that was for the month.
So you said the planning board is meeting on Tuesday, the 18th?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Are we we're meeting in the morning on Tuesday, the 18th, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. And what time was the planning board meeting on the 18th?
Planning board meeting will be at 5 p.m.
5 p.m. Thank you. Sorry for that.
No problem.
A little slow. Okay, got it. Any questions for Wes? Thank you, Wes.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. And Councilman Holland, I would say, just note or point out that the fees, the total amount of fees, most of that can be attributed to, we had 3 new constructions for that in that month. So that's where a bulk of it will come.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And next we'll hear from our Chief of Police, Chief David Cole.
Evening, Mayor, members of council. The police report for the month of December 2021, we had a total of 1,680 calls for service. That's an increase of about 243 from last year. Most of those were additional business checks and residence checks. We had a total of 7 reported crimes or incidents, excuse me, 4 criminal arrests. 2 of those were drug related, and 2 of those were also weapons related to the drugs. The officers conducted 94 traffic stops for December and issued 14 written citations and another 78 warning citations. And we had 1 local ordinance violation as well as 1 reportable traffic accident. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Next, we'll have our report from our Fire Department Deputy Chief Matt Dudick.
Mayor, members of the council, good evening. So this is our monthly report for the Southern Shores Fire Department activity for the month of December. We had a total of 38 calls for service, which is right in line with last year. Well, we had 45 in December of 2020, so we're a little bit slower, but the breakdown percentage-wise was pretty much the same. We had 1 structure fire, resulted in some minor damage to 1 building, but it was mitigated quickly. We had 23 calls for emergency medical services in conjunction with Dare County EMS. 1 hazardous condition call, 9 service calls, 2 good intent calls, and 2 false alarms. So it's like I said, we're right on track for where we were last year at this time, and all calls were answered with adequate staffing by our volunteer force, and we're on track to start a good year next year. So, any questions? All right.
That's great. Thank you, Matt.
All right.
Appreciate
Thank
it
you.
very
Thank you,
much. Next, we'll have our town manager's report.
Good
Mr. Cliff
evening and
Ogburn.
Happy New Year to all. I've got 4 things I wanted to go over. The first on my list was a update about the Mid-Currituck Bridge, the status of the lawsuit and expected appeal. But the town attorney and I spoke earlier, and he's going to give that update under his report. Next thing I wanted to ask the council about is whether or not you wanted to pursue a council retreat sometime, possibly this winter. There's 2 different routes I would kind of suggest that if you were inclined to have a retreat for 2 different purposes, and of course these purposes could be combined. One, I think we would likely benefit from a facilitator. The other, maybe not as much, but you'll see in my memo, I had 4 bullet points here about reasons why you'd want to retreat and have a facilitator. It provides an opportunity for the board members to learn more about each other, your motivations, your interests, your work preferences, clarify mutual expectations, establish board priorities, and define what success or progress is. That's kind of what I think of as a traditional retreat. Another option is maybe we spend a day looking at some of the priorities that are already on the table and putting those priorities in the calendar and start kind of a early pre-budgeting capital improvement plan, what your projects are and what you want to see done in the upcoming year. As part of that, we met today, the Public Works Director, Town Engineer, and we talked about the ARPA funds, the 970-some thousand that we've gotten from the stimulus money, and applying that to stormwater projects. And this could also kind of tie in with the budget, and we can start going through and explaining and showing for you how we've prioritized the projects, the steps we're going to take to pursue the project. And if that project fails or doesn't qualify or it can't be done, then we'll go to the next one. So, I don't know if this is something the council wants to entertain or not. The reason I bring it up now is if you were inclined to go the route of more strategic, long-term planning, expectations, that sort of thing, then, and we were to get a facilitator, I'd need to schedule that fairly quickly because there are a lot of facilitators, but there's probably the good ones get their calendar filled up quickly. So I'd want to pursue that sooner rather than later.
Okay. You want us to talk about it now? You want to wait till you get to the end of your?
Well, we can wait.
Okay.
The other, one of the other two things, the progress with the pavement condition plan. I think it was back in November, we presented a third option to you with a budget of $800,000. And the first year of that project, 2022 now, it's got several streets that would receive mostly some patching and some rehab with some kind of overlay work. But mostly this first year project would be patching. And staff had kind of gone back and forth about how we wanted to pursue going forward with implementing this plan. And CEPI sent us a proposal that we thought was in line with close to what we would normally spend to implement a project like this. But the advantage of being, if we use CEPI, who put this plan together, and CEPI identified the need and they made these recommendations, that we would get a lot of benefit out of allowing them to take us through the first year of this project. We could kind of shadow what they're doing, how this is, because it's a little bit of a deviation from the projects that we normally do. But I'm hoping to have that kickoff meeting next week to get that project started. Question for the council is whether or not you want to see the bid package for this. It's not something you have to approve. Obviously, you'll have to approve the contract, but because this is a new process, if you wanted to see the bid package, we'd bring that to you probably a mid-March meeting. Otherwise, we'd go to bid. But you may want to see this the first year.
Would that be for the entire expenditure?
Yes.
I'd be interested in seeing it.
I think we're all nodding our
Yeah.
heads in the
Yeah.
same direction on that one, yeah.
So
Okay.
then
So mid-March?
Well, yeah, we'll hope to be able to do it first March, but it might be the
Okay.
mid-month meeting. And then finally, we got notice back before Christmas from DOT that they're planning the inspections of the 3 town bridges. This is a Federal Highway Administration funds they fund 80% of the cost, and the town has to pick up the other 20%. And for us, it's, I think, $650 a bridge to inspect the 3 bridges. And we thought we might be able to take advantage of, this is a subcontractor that's here, and while they're here, take advantage of them to inspect the Trinity Culvert. The rules, the Trinity Culvert doesn't meet the rule for inspecting it's not wide enough. It has to be of a certain width. So we've got a cost and a not to exceed amount. We can exempt this from RFQ process under the Minnie Brooks Act. The bridge was last inspected, I think, in 2014, just before it was replaced. So it's been some years since it's been inspected. Normally it's every 2 years for the bridges. We're also pursuing calls from the inspector that did, the engineering firm that did that inspection then. But if you're all agreeable, we'll pursue getting the Trinity Culvert inspected. It's likely going to tell us that it's fallen in on the sides.
Yeah.
We know we're going to have to replace it eventually. Hopefully this report will tell us how far off eventually is. And then I can tie this back to the retreat, as we may need to talk about how we're going to budget this, what could be a very large expenditure.
I think it makes sense to get it inspected by
Yes.
the Ncdot vendor.
Yeah, I know when I walked Trinity, that bridge was a big subject of concern by some residents. They even walked me down there and showed me what they were concerned about. So I think that's a good move.
What is the cost for that?
It'd be somewhere under 5,000. The DOT inspections are about 3,500, but that was, they're inspecting. I don't know if this subcontractor is inspecting everything in the division, but, they got economy of scale, I guess.
And it's just an engineering report of as-built conditions. Do we need to know that it's failing? I mean, do we need to pay somebody to tell us it's failing?
Well, that's a good question. If we're going to replace it, then we don't need to inspect
If
it.
there's added value, like prescriptive improvements to it, it'd be one thing. But
Well, not the only, but a reason I would suggest the inspection is for it would tell us if this-
Timeline.
what the sense of urgency is for replacing it.
I also like the idea of a different set of eyes looking at it that, hasn't dealt with it before.
Do we have the 2014 report?
Yes.
I'd be curious in seeing that too.
Okay.
I don't really have a problem with having an inspector, but I think it's pretty clear the bridge is failing. And the 14 report might have had a timeline attached to it too.
Somewhere it's going to have to be replaced because the design that's there now, that we've attempted numerous times to keep it from doing what it's doing, and we've not succeeded.
Yeah.
And I think way back when there was a different design proposed, and the council at that time, I think because of cost, decided to go the route putting that culvert or tube in.
Right.
And apparently everything's collapsing around the sides of the tube because of its design. So,
That's right.
and I go across it enough that, if you're not used to it, you'll bounce across in a car.
If the 14 report said it needs to be replaced in the next 10 years, I don't know that we need to know that again. But if it's more, I would defer to you. If the 14 report gives you the requisite information, then I think we could operate on that. But if we need a new one or an updated one, that'd be my opinion.
Okay.
Because it's pretty obvious there's subsidence on either
Yeah,
side.
they're both sides of it.
Maybe we report says it lasts 25 more years. I don't know.
So we're leaving it up to you.
Yep, I'll
I
pursue
think that's
that.
where we landed.
Okay.
Yes.
As far as a retreat, and I guess I'm using the word retreat to kind of be what I would traditionally think a workshop would be. It'd be less formal, give you a chance to just kind of talk about these things without necessarily making any decisions. But you got two different routes, or third option is you do neither.
Well, I'll speak up as a new council member. I think a retreat would be really valuable to me in terms of just getting up to speed on certain areas. And shortly, we're going to have an additional council member. So that's 2 new people on the council. And I think it would be valuable to the new folks in particular.
Is the retreat off-site?
Can be.
Is it public?
It's public.
Because traditionally we've done something similar, budget priorities and whatnot, but we haven't had a facilitator. We do sort of a March pre-budget.
We over time, we've had a facilitator. One time we met over in the old fire department
Mhm.
and did that one over there.
Meeting the new fire department.
And we could meet the new, it gave everybody a chance to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
And
go
they've
back
got
to
a
the
nice
chief of
facility
staff.
there for a meeting room.
What's the added bonus of a facilitator?
Well, I think it depends on which route you're going. If you're just setting goals and priorities for the coming year, I don't necessarily think that you need one. If it's kind of what I guess I would call the team building,
Trust falls and stuff like
that
that?
kind of stuff would probably be beneficial with a facilitator.
Yeah.
Because, it puts someone else in charge of kind of, everyone participates
Yeah,
equally.
they're the unbiased ones in the
Right.
group. Would this be for a day, or are we talking about 2 days?
2 mornings, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
2 days is a
Well, I mean,
hard thing for me to do.
Yeah.
I would prefer 1 day,
I
but
like
Yeah.
that, great.
Either 2 mornings or 1 day suits me better. And I'm leaning towards the kind of opportunity to have longer discussions about that overall strategic plan of
Mhm.
infrastructure improvements, so on and so forth, as well as kind of a orientation kind of thing to catch up anybody, not to mention us, that's been sitting up here for a while, on things. So I don't think a facilitator really would benefit us that much, personally. That's
Would
where
benefit us? It
I
would
don't.
not?
I don't. I think, but I think,
That was the way I was leaning personally.
yeah, I think just the ability to have a longer discussion where we're all interacting, but along the lines of, I mean, the last time
In the fire department.
in the fire department, last time I think Cliff's only brought that spreadsheet out the one time, the whole strategic capital, capital
Yeah,
improvement,
with the
long-term plan.
timeline.
And that's something
Yeah.
we've been wanting to do for a long time. So is 2 mornings better for you, or is one day with a break in the middle okay as well?
One day is probably fine.
Okay.
That
Leo,
way-
one day?
One day is fine with me.
You're fine?
Well, if you, Matt,
What do you think, Paul?
you only disrupt you one day
We've
rather
done
than
it
2
before,
days.
so.
Yeah.
Latter part of February?
I'm sorry?
Just latter part
Sometime,
of
yeah, in
February?
Latter
February.
part of February. That seems reasonable. Uh-oh.
That-
Except for somebody's traveling.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that Valentine's Day portion, I'll probably be coming back on the 14th on Virginia, is my guess.
Yeah, it would be better for me at early March.
Early March?
That's fine,
Early
I
March?
think.
Cliff, do you think there's a benefit to a facilitator, or is it just really?
The sense I'm getting of what we would be working on, I think maybe it would not be beneficial. It's not necessary. Might, but because I think it's going to be a true working
Workshop.
day,
Yeah,
you know,
that's the meat and potatoes, so that'd be after more than personality tests and stuff.
that's a better way of putting it. Yeah.
I think it suits our personalities.
Yeah,
We
let's
like
get
to
down to
dig in and
business.
start making things happen, so,
It
yeah.
puts more effort on you. Well, it'd be an agenda-free thing, but it'd be starting with sort of budget priorities and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
It is sort of
Long-term
putting
vision.
a burden on staff. I will recognize that, but
You got a council meeting on the 2nd, is March 4th too soon after that? That,
No, probably not.
March 4th on Friday morning, or
No,
all day
I
Friday,
need to
excuse
go
me.
after March 6th.
uh-oh.
I'm
After-
sorry.
After March 6th.
I'm assuming Friday, so I'll go to March 11th.
Yeah, 11th work for me.
Books.
'Cause I
That's
don't
great.
have-
It's my birthday. It's perfect.
Happy birthday,
Oh,
yeah.
early.
It's perfect.
We'll have a cake.
That's
Yeah, it's perfect.
That's in April.
Yeah, it was in April, isn't it?
What's in April?
March 11th, 2022?
I would probably prefer like a Thursday or
Would Thursday be
Tuesday or
better?
something.
Probably so.
That's fine.
Just because I got payroll on Friday. Nobody needs to get paid.
Could you do Thursday?
Yes.
As
March 10th.
long
Who's
as,
our
as
busy
long as I
schedule?
can be out of here by 4 o'clock,
Oh, for sure.
because I have to be in
Well, that's when the
Eaton
cocktail
I have to
hour
be
is.
in Eaton by
Huh?
6:30.
That's when the cocktail hour is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, I'm driving an hour and a half to Eaton for a meeting over
Okay.
there.
We could do the 8th, 9th, anytime that week. I think I could make work. So,
What works for you, Cliff?
Any of that
so
March
Leo
10th.
doesn't have a constraint. Why don't we pick like the 9th or something?
night?
Do Wednesday the 9th?
Okay,
Okay.
Went-
very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben, how are you tonight?
You're on.
I'm fine, Madam Mayor. How are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. The rare occasion where I actually have something to report,
And
not
we're all anticipating.
but not very much.
Okay.
Somehow magically, the federal court must have been listening to our meeting last December. Was it December 8th?
7th?
7th. So in a 6-day period, they wrote a 52-page order after considering 78,000 pages of record material. I'm sure that was all after the meeting, but I think we got relatively lucky in that had been in the works for a period of time, and it timed itself in line with where we were considering it. So there was an order entered in the state and federal government's favor in regard to the plaintiff I can actually look right here and tell you who the plaintiffs are. We always think of the Southern Environmental Law Center as the lawyers, but it's the North Carolina Wildlife Federation and the No Mid-Currituck Bridge Concerned Citizens and Visitors Opposed to the Mid-Currituck Bridge, who are the plaintiffs. And they challenged the environmental statements related to the project and the process for putting them together. And ultimately, the court concluded that the defendants, the Federal Highway Administration and the DOT state DOT had done their homework the right way and issued a very detailed order. And that was on December 13th. And that gives them 60 days to appeal,
60.
which would be February 11th. Assuming they don't seek an extension of the time to file an appeal or file intermediary motions challenging the order in the trial court. My expectation is they'll probably not do either of those things, but they could, so it could take even longer before an appeal occurs. Essentially, until then, it's in a relative holding pattern. There are, even if they don't appeal, there are other permitting processes that have to occur before the bridge would ever get built. In addition to the complexities of the General Assembly and funding and all sorts of other fun and excitement that we've dealt with over the last 10 years or so, when the bridge has been getting ready to get built, not getting ready to get built, and gone back and forth between the General Assembly and its decisions about the bridge. But that's basically where it stands for now.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Ben?
So we're just waiting. There's not anything we can do behind the scenes or?
Well, I think
Not
it's
until the
still
appeal's
like it
filed.
was last month, that the most likely place for you to have much input is potentially via some sort of amicus brief in the Fourth Circuit, which is the appellate court, if they file an appeal. The ultimate analysis on that is whether or not the town's benefit is going to be worth the cost. And I think at some point I'll have to come up with some sort of cost estimate and whether or not our firm can do it, or whether or not you might have to consult with a different kind of firm. It's a relatively specialized area of the law. That doesn't concern me too much. The concepts that they're dealing with in the order aren't beyond what I'm used to dealing with. But the concept of having a 78,000 page record that someone needs to at least know generally what's in it, that's a lot of reading and a lot of time and a lot of expense that you'll have to take into account how you want to address that. And I don't know that I would have to read all of it, but as prior Judge Sherlock knows, it's no fun going into court and being the guy that the judge asks, well, what about page 42? And you say, I didn't read that one, Judge. That's not a good answer. So whether it's us or some other firm or somebody else, somebody's going to have to be pretty familiar with what's going on. And without regard to the legal end of it, just becoming familiar is going to be time consuming and expensive.
What was the deadline for the appeal? Is there a deadline?
February 11th.
As long as they don't seek any
Challenge the
changes.
procedure, yeah.
In federal court, you can file a motion for an extension of time to file an appeal, which in state court in North Carolina, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So they've got 60 days from December 13th, which is February the 11th.
Okay.
Ben, any insight as to how quickly the Fourth Circuit usually operates, or these are strange times for courts?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Trying to think back to the last time I was in the Fourth Circuit. Six months is probably about as fast as you're going to see anything. And I would think that's rare. It's probably more likely a year to 2 years before you see, once people start putting the record together, from the notice of appeal time to get an answer. 2 years is probably more consistent, because there's a few months where there's a record put together. In this case, it may not be it's going to be a big record, but it may not be a big job to put it all together because there was a record of a prior decision. So that might not be the biggest hurdle that they have. But then there's a 2 or 3 months of briefing if nobody files a motion for extension of time. Most of the time, both parties file an extension of time. So you're looking at 4 or 5 months of briefing, maybe 6 months of briefing. And then the court takes it and it's on its own schedule.
Right.
Any other questions for Ben?
Thank you.
Nope.
Thanks, Ben.
Yep.
I just have a follow-up question, I think, for Cliff. Is there any other news updates from Ncdot on the Mid-Currituck Bridge?
No, I think a lot of it depends on whether or not it gets appealed. The last I heard from DOT was, they took the money out of the planned year, and now they're considering whether or not to put it back. And it'll depend on whether or not, at the earliest, though, it would go back, instead of 2 years, it would go back 18 months. And the reason for that is the time for, just getting everything ready. All the remaining work for engineering, surveying, all that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
How do we communicate with them?
The Division 1 engineer, Sterling Baker.
I mean, can we as a council send some missive to these powers that be to say, this is important and we need you to speed this up as
Yes, that I think would best go to Alan Moran, who's the appointed Division 1, I guess, kind of the liaison between citizens, elected officials, and the actual boots on the ground.
Is that via a resolution, or how would we do that?
Letter?
Can we just
Either
authorize the
way.
mayor to send a letter?
You can. Yes.
Maybe have lunch with Alan.
It's not a bad idea.
A letter, too.
Well, have lunch and then send a letter
Yeah. Yeah, okay,
confirming the conversation.
okay.
Do we need a motion for that, or can we just do it?
I don't think so.
Again, and I don't want to beat this horse to death every time I'm here, but I just think we've got to make some noise here in Southern Shores about getting this, because there is all this infrastructure money coming to North Carolina. It's going to go somewhere, and I'd like to see us get part of it. And the other thing I'd like to do, and I'm not sure if I need the mayor's permission but I really think we need to initiate some serious discussions with Duck about working on this together. Because it's not just Southern Shores that's affected. Duck is affected. I know they're concerned about it, but we've got a period of time here where we can't do much, but we can build some bridges and get a consensus of what they're concerned about and what we're concerned about and what steps we can take. And if money is an issue, having two towns, attack this instead of one would be helpful, I think.
True. Matt, when was the last time the ARPO talked about the Mid-Currituck Bridge?
It's kind of mentioned, they didn't go into depth prior to that letter that Angela Walsh received in November, I think it was. The
Mhm.
meeting prior to that, they didn't really address it, but typically COVID kind of derailed some of their meetings, but we were getting some better updates earlier on in 2020. But,
Okay. Do you have any idea of the next meeting?
Mhm.
Okay.
Wes probably does.
There's not.
Do they meet
Sure, there's one
quarterly?
scheduled.
It's been really sort of ad hoc
So,
since
okay.
COVID. I mean, it's
Okay.
like, oh, we're going to have a meeting.
Okay.
next month.
So they just let you know,
Yeah.
oh, by the way, next week we're going to
The
meet.
email comes across.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So maybe, but make sort of a three-pronged approach, kind of a touch base with Alan Moran, maybe start some conversations with the town of Duck.
We'll get
And
Duck's
then-
rep to go to the next ARP.
Yeah, and get some.
Who's their rep?
Some more,
Who's their rep from Duckford? Oh,
They never show up. I mean, it's
Oh.
a pretty sparsely. The one in person I was able to go to, I think Wes and I are the only town from Dare County represented. County was there. Well, Do you remember anybody else there? I think Andy was there from NACSED, deputy town manager.
Okay.
We can find out.
Yeah, we'll
Set all this up.
we'll pursue
No.
all of those things. It has been strange times.
Yeah.
And it definitely has affected that particular group. There's no doubt. So we'll try all the things that we can try.
Sounds good.
Very good.
That's
Because
all we can
Paula
do.
is going to keep bringing it up,
Yes, I am.
which is great. Thanks, Cliff. Appreciate that. Okay. We now have general public comment. Very few folks here tonight, but would anyone like to comment this evening? Seeing none, we'll move right along. Old business. Continuation of the council vacancy discussion. So I'll just start, but everyone will get a chance to join in. So in December, we decided to initiate a self-nomination process, and we did that. We have now subsequently received 14 applications. And what is heartwarming and really amazing is the number of people who would like to join this hardy group up here, and also the breadth of accomplishments and skills and desire to be more active in their community and to work to make the town an even better place to live. I mean, it's just really, it makes you feel really good about where you live when you have people like this that want to step up and join the council. Personally, just as a courtesy, I have contacted each of the 14 individuals and spoken to them by phone and done just two things. I have, notified them that we are in receipt of their application, and all the council members are reviewing them, and to thank them for submitting an application, for stepping up. Gave them an opportunity to ask questions, but that's all I did. Had great conversations with everybody, and enjoyed speaking to them. I think because of, personally, I was traveling, there's been holidays. We are still we just got an application not that long ago. For that reason, and the fact that we do want to make the right choice, I would like to suggest that we decide to make a motion and vote on the filling of the vacancy at the January 18th meeting, which is a 9 a.m. in the morning meeting. So that's what I believe everybody has agreed to do. So,
Yeah, that was my position last month.
and that's what Leo said even at the last meeting. It's just, holidays are just weird, and, you're distracted, and so it hasn't been a good time to try to make a decision. Leo, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, you want a motion or do we need any more discussion?
Do anybody else want to talk about it some more?
18th is fine.
18th is fine?
18th is fine.
Everybody
Oh,
good?
okay. I move that we move this discussion to on filling the vacant seat to the 18th of January,
Okay. Do we need a
22.
vote, or you want to just by consensus
I'll say second or by consensus.
Yeah, we'll just say
whichever.
by consensus that that's what we're going to do. Thanks, Leo. Appreciate it. Okay.
And the only
yes.
thing I'd like to add, because I think it's really a testament to the town, is that I'm just stunned at these applications. I mean, they are just amazing. We have entrepreneurs, international business executives, attorneys, a medical doctor, professors, a restaurateur, intelligence, people from the intelligence community. We've got retired folks. We've got parents of young kids. And it's wonderful. I mean, it really is wonderful. I don't know where they were when I was running for this office, but I'm certainly glad they've stepped up now. So it's, I think we've really got our work cut out for us because it's a good, got young folks, old folks, in between, people who work at home, people who just have unbelievable resumes. So, and I think Elizabeth has called, I intend to call some of these people to have a little more in-depth discussion with them about some of the things I noticed on resumes.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I can't, it's just heartwarming to meet people on paper and talk to them briefly and that are excited about where they live. They're excited about getting more involved in their community. And I just think it's awesome. It's great. It's a great feeling. So, okay. New business. Public hearing. Hand it off to Ben.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This item is a legislative public hearing on ZTA 21-09, a zoning text amendment application submitted by the town to amend Town Code Section 36-202D6, maximum allowable lot coverage, and a number of other related sections that are listed in the agenda and are part of the amendment itself, all related to maximum allowable lot coverage. What I'll do is I'll open the public hearing and I'll have Mr. Haskett speak first, and then we'll see if there's anyone from the public here to speak. And following that, I'll return it back to the council. So, Mr. Haskett, we'll open the public hearing with you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallup. This first public hearing is, as Mr. Gallup pointed out, ZTA-2109. And this is a request from the town to amend the town zoning ordinance by amending sections 36-202, D6, 203, D6, 204, D6, and 205, D6, all related to maximum allowable lot coverage. As you all can recall, at the March 2nd, 2021 council meeting, council instructed town staff to take valuable elements out of the adoption draft of the town code update. These proposed amendments are a result of that and comments provided by the town attorney regarding the use of the first line of stable natural vegetation on oceanfront lots for determining lot coverage. His comments referred to North Carolina General Statute 77-20, which establishes that the seaward boundary of ocean properties is the mean high water mark. The proposed amendments are an effort to make it clear that the town's lot coverage requirements for lots where the boundary is the Atlantic Ocean use the first line of stable natural vegetation to establish lot coverage by using only a portion of the lots, not for establishing the seaward boundary or area of the lots. If this were to be approved tonight, the proposed amendments would not change how lot coverage is actually calculated, that being 30%. On lots where the boundary is the Atlantic Ocean. And Sheila, if you can, please bring up that survey. In your package, you all received a copy of an as-built survey. This is for 64A Ocean Boulevard, and this is what's required whenever we have permits that have been issued where we want to confirm and make sure that the lot coverage is under as it was approved to be. And if you might not be able to see it on the screen, but if you look under the notes on the left-hand side, you'll see where it shows the lot area. Then there's also the lot area west of the veg line. That would be the first line of stable natural vegetation. And then it'll show the coverage in square footage west of the veg line, and then what percentage that is of that area west of the veg line. So the proposed language in ZTA 2109 will not affect that calculation. This is more of a wording change to clarify that we're not using the boundary to establish the area or the first line of stable natural vegetation to establish an area, but only to do that calculation that I just went over there to make sure that they don't exceed 30%. With respect to the town's land use plan, we recommend and found that it's consistent with policy 2. The town staff also recommended approval and recommends approval of this proposed ETA. The planning board recommended approval also unanimously at their November 15th planning board meeting. And I also would like to note that the proposed language was drafted with the assistance of Professor David Owens with the UNC School of Government. And again, that this language that's suggested is clarifying that the first line of stable natural vegetation is used to establish lot coverage by using a portion of the lots and not for calculating the seaward boundary or area of the lots. And Mr. Gallup was also helpful throughout this process as well. If you all have any questions, I can try to answer them at this time.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Haskett?
What exactly precipitated the language revision?
What was the what?
What precipitated
Yeah.
the language revision? I saw Ben references North Carolina statute, but I mean, it reads the same either way.
Yeah, if he wants to elaborate on that, he can do
Well, I
that.
understand it's
Brought up the
a little
comments.
clearer, but
There's a statute, NCGS 77-20, which talks about the seaward boundaries of coastal lands. And Section A provides that the basically all land that is privately owned ends at the mean high water mark.
No, I get that, but the language we're redacting and then replacing them, and they say the same thing. You read the underlying portion out of it, it reads the same way.
The result is ultimately similar. They are slightly different. The language that actually brought up the changes is in Section B and not Section A. And Section B relates to using the mean high water mark for any calculation of area on a property that is bounded by the Atlantic Ocean. And one way of reading Section B is that you have to calculate anything that uses the lot area for a calculation
As the lot coverage.
for an oceanfront lot or a lot that is bounded by the Atlantic Ocean should use the mean high water mark. So what Professor Owens attempted to do here was to define the lot coverage calculation in a manner that wasn't using the area of the lot, but used the area that has historically been used and was able to keep the 30% calculation.
Well, I get what he's doing. It just seems like it reads the same way. I mean, only that area landward, I mean, it's not encompassing the whole lot with the original language anyway. It's already subdividing for just the purpose of lot coverage. But anyway, I'm muddying a point, and I get where it's coming from. It seems like a
think that
useless change.
The biggest change is the striking of the term area.
Yeah.
In an attempt to avoid the statutory
Area
reference
landward.
to area and use the portion of the lot
I'm with
rather
you.
than the term area.
I'm being pugnacious. We can move on.
And, Professor Owens and I went back and forth a little bit about this one to some degree. This is what the planning board's recommended. And my
What did
analysis
you recommend?
is to use the mean high water mark and to change the
That's a
percentage
surveying
calculation.
nightmare.
Yes. Well, it's not that
At
hard.
what static point do you take the mean high if you're taking lot coverage? I mean, at the time I permit my property and the time I might get an as-built, that lot coverage could shift.
It can.
So
It can. But I think that it's analysis of risk. I think that that's the least, under this statutory
That's the
scheme, that's the
cleanest
least
risk.
risky
I
way to
got
use
you.
it. And the way you had it is probably the most risky way to do it. And the way that Professor Owens put together, he and I agreed, is less risky, but not the least risky way to do it.
So you got full force, you're going to defend this?
If you'd like me to, yes.
Well, hopefully
Hopefully it won't be an issue, but
yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't apply to, you know, there's lots already got buildings on them or houses on them. It's only going to be what, lots that are vacant that this is going to,
Or if
Have
we're
an
doing a
impact on-
renovation on
Redevelopment.
Ocean, but it's a net effect of zero to what we've already been doing. It's just, I mean, I'm not an attorney, but it reads the same way.
Yeah,
Either direction. but-
Well, that resulting wise, the ultimate purpose was to have the same calculations that have always been done.
Yeah.
Uh,
It gets there.
And just to note that this really doesn't affect properties from Hickory North because the property line is actually on like the top of the dune.
Mhm.
So it would be from Hickory South for new development or
Oh,
any
okay.
redevelopment. But I looked into and tried to do some calculations if you did use the mean high water mark using 30%, and obviously that didn't work out. And I played with other numbers, and it was very difficult to come up with something that would be fair or consistent with what's been done historically if we wanted to change that number. So this is the one that staff has recommended and the planning board has recommended.
Well, I correspond with a fair number of oceanfront people, and they're, have been a little stung by having their property taxes raised and other issues. I want to be able to go back to them and say, this is a change in language. It's a clarification. It is not going to change how lot coverage is calculated. Now, can I say that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
If this is approved, you could say that.
What's the date of that survey?
It's on this form of instruction.
So that's an
That's a house
as-built
next
under
to
the
it.
current, it's using the same.
8/19/19.
deadline.
8/19/19.
Yeah, that's the
August
house next to it.
2019.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and thank you for providing the map. That's very helpful.
So,
Yes,
I mean,
ma'am.
Using that, it's a clear, that's the same way, the
Right.
new language would use it the same way.
That's correct. As-built surveys, the surveyors will know the same, to provide the same information.
This is, never mind. I was going to ask a non sequitur. I want to, but I'm not going to belabor the point.
Any more questions for Mr. Haskett?
Nope.
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Haskett.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak to this public hearing? I'm assuming
Don't see
there's no
any
one on the
hands up.
sign-up sheet since all three of the people who are here said no. So I will close the public hearing and give it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Ben. Any further discussion, council? Can I have a motion to approve ZTA 2109 as presented by staff and recommended by the planning board?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
No more discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Ben, I'll hand it back to you for our second public hearing, ZTA 2110.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this is another legislative public hearing on ZTA 21-10, zoning text amendment application, again submitted by the town to amend code section 36-207B, permitted uses, and section 36-209, prohibited uses in all districts related to produce stands. And I'll go through the same process that we did on the prior one. I'll have Mr. Haskett come up and open the public hearing with him.
Thank you again, Mr. Gallup. This ZTA 21-10, is an amendment again from the town to amend 36-207B and 36-209. This also comes about from the town code update, which that occurred in March. And at the May 4th, 2021 council meeting, you all council adopted ZTA 2104 that established prohibited uses in the town. Out of the discussion or during the approval process for that, when you all considered it, the council directed the planning board to recommend a ZTA or come up with some proposed language that would allow produce stands in our commercial zoning district. This ZTA establishes produce stands as a permitted use in the commercial zoning district. and it includes requirements that address setbacks, hours of operation, parking, signage, trash receptacles, and vehicular and pedestrian traffic safety. With respect to the town's land use plan, town staff feels that is consistent with policy 2. And town staff recommend that the proposed amendments, as well as the town planning board unanimously at their November 15, 2021 meeting. You'll see we included in your packets also the requirements from some of the jurisdictions in the area and they were used and discussed at the planning board meeting. When I was drafting this, I kind of pulled a little bit from a few of them. Then at the planning board meeting, the planning board also provided some feedback and added a little bit to it as well. So you'll see in the first part of the ZTA, these are the changes to the permitted uses in the commercial zoning district. And in part 2, 36-209, that's where we actually would strike out produce stand, so it's no longer a permitted, prohibited use. If you all have questions, I can try to answer them at this time.
I guess one question. So the part of the conditions here is that these can only operate from April 15th to November 15th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's correct.
So that would exclude anybody from selling Christmas trees or
Currently, yes, ma'am, it would.
that sort
That
of
was my
thing.
question.
This would not include Christmas trees.
Have you had any requests for people to sell Christmas trees?
No, not Christmas trees specifically since I've been here, but I have had, and it's been a long time. I've had a couple requests for a produce stand, but it was not long after I came here. But for Christmas tree lots or Christmas tree sales, no, sir, I've never had that request.
Okay.
And I think if we wanted to do that, that this would have to be written a little different because they're kind of separate as opposed to when you have a Christmas tree lot. Well, I would think of a lot where they're stood up and shown on a piece of property that covers a pretty good area as opposed to, whether it's a tent or a back of someone's truck or if it's a structure that someone actually builds.
Well, I think an example is down here in Kittiak where they have, and that's, I think, a tent, I believe, that you see there.
Oh, the Christmas
Christmas
trees.
time.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, I guess I want to put this in the form of a recommendation. So I guess I don't have questions.
What
So I'll
you,
wait till we get to discussion.
We get comment.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Haskett?
The only one stand per lot, in some of the other ordinances, it's like lots of 10 acres. Is the marketplace greater than 10 acres or less than 10 acres?
I can't answer that right now without looking.
There are about three things, well, it's questions time, but there are about three things that just, anyway. If you don't have an answer, that's cool.
I don't know. I can't recall if it's less than or greater than 10 acres right now. I can look pretty quickly though if you
When you get a chance.
town manager's checking it right now. I want to say it's less, but I don't want to tell you wrong.
Feels less, but horizontal distances can confuse you. It's flat like that.
have we had a request for a produce stand in the marketplace?
No, sir.
But they've been prohibited.
What's that?
Food line.
No, but I mean, you could ask, even though it may be prohibitive, most we can say is no, but you might catch somebody at a weak moment and say yes. But I'm just, trying to figure out what the market is, or, do we have this large demand? I'm trying to figure that out.
Like I said, I haven't had a request.
I mean, I've not had anybody ask me about it, so.
The town manager confirmed that it's 18.11. According to Dare County, it's approximately 18.
18 acres.
Yes.
Wes, can you explain 11A? I don't know what C, General Commercial District, I'm not sure what that is.
That is the yard requirements. Those are the setback requirements for structures in that district.
So anything zone C, which is essentially zone commercial, right?
Anything zone C, which is commercial, is pretty
Is-
much along 158.
Okay. Has to meet
And
whatever the setback.
Southern Shores Crossing, obviously.
Okay.
And it would have to observe those setbacks, which is, I think, 10 from the sides, 25 on the front and rear, I believe.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Haskett. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak to this public hearing?
I might be able to help a little bit. Or hinder, probably, but hinder. And when we did this, there was only actually two commercial properties that this looks like it applies to. As far as the marketplace, in discussing the marketplace, there's no way Food Lion will allow it in. I mean, there would be a lot of discussion with Aston Properties, I'm sure, with Food Lion, because it would be against their interests. The two places would be Southern Shores Crossing, and the other place would be the unoccupied, where there's no commercial building at all, and that is towards the bridge on the other side. That was the only two properties that we saw feasible, that if they want to do this, that's the only two places probably feasibly that it can go. So when you're thinking about it, you're looking at the commercial properties, but logistically, it just wouldn't work at probably the marketplace. I don't think it would work because the parking lot would be occupied. All the frontage is taken. And if they put it in a parking lot, it may violate how many parking spaces are acceptable in that parking lot. So just to clarify when you're discussing or whatever you're thinking about, it won't be, you can more or less forget the marketplace because I think any building there might violate the parking standards. So, okay. I don't know whether it helps or confuses, but I just thought I'd clarify when we discussed it, that was part of our discussion in where it would be applicable. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else from the audience wish to speak? Seeing no one, Madam Mayor, excuse me, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Ben. So just to start off the discussion, I'd like to thank the planning board for all of your work on this, because this was purely because we as a council asked you to do this, because we wanted to not have it on the list of prohibited uses. We wanted to have it as a possible use. And so what I'd like to suggest is that we try to make it, I'm sort of interested personally in the possibility of a produce stand. I think it would be a good thing. I could see it at Southern Shores Crossing. I guess you couldn't put it at the development where the pizza stop is. I guess that wouldn't qualify, or would it qualify?
It may be possible, but I think they would be tight on parking.
Yeah.
That would be tight. It's not much space in that area.
They're required and provided parking spaces are about equal, so I don't think they'd be able to do it.
Okay. And then I doubt Town Bank wants a produce stand in there.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Front of their bank. So anyway, so we're talking basically about Southern Shores Crossing and maybe an undeveloped property. But just a couple of potential, I would like to offer some changes, which Ben is already looking at me about. Okay, so in 11, it reads produce stands, a retail sale of fruits, vegetables, fruits, comma, vegetables, comma, plants,
Subject.
and other agricultural products, subject to the following requirements. So just give people a larger array of potential things to sell. That's what I'm suggesting. I think in D, all stands shall comply with all applicable Dare County Health Department requirements and the Department of Agriculture. I believe the Department of Agriculture actually is the entity that inspects produce stands if they don't do any food processing. I think Wes checked that for me. Is that correct, Wes? Okay. And then in K, the opportunity to have, I understand the idea of a temporary stand, because people might want to just do something that's temporary, something that's easy to move in and easy to move out. But if they wanted to do something that was more than temporary, they could get a building permit. So we could add after the end of that sentence, within 3 days upon seasonal closure, unless the structure required a building permit. And then with the permission of the parking lot, of the shopping center owner, they could actually build a structure. So those are my wording change suggestions.
Would you keep the seasonal dates of operation?
I'm okay with that. Were you thinking about
Opening a Christmas tree stand?
building it out and opening, in your spare time, did you want to sell Christmas trees?
I like less.
Yeah,
Less
I really think, I have in mind, the one in Kitty Hawk, which is April 15th to November 15th. I think that.
They're May to November.
Yeah,
Or May.
the
Whatever
one,
it
yeah,
is.
the one down and what is it, Kill Devil Hills there.
Or KDH,
That-
whatever it is,
That
sorry.
one, I think he runs the end of October, what he told me.
My thoughts are pretty close to yours. I like Currituck's definition for just a statement of retail sale of agricultural and horticultural products.
Okay.
Just keep, and then I was going to strike K, or I thought we should just strike it.
Strike it all together.
Only because my intent wasn't I wanted to open the door for somebody to come in for all kinds of, farm to table, forest. I mean, we don't know what people might be selling honey in
True.
early
Yeah.
December, or,
Mhm.
Christmas knickknack, or, I don't know.
Honey, they might be selling peanuts.
But at the same time, it's not a deal breaker for me. Anything is better than nothing.
Yeah, I mean.
But striking is cleaner than editing, right?
Striking
Ben?
is cleaning the editor. Did you want to lecture us now about making changes? Okay.
This is the more risky choice.
As you all know, probably, you might not know, this might be your first time for this short lecture, but if a change is substantial enough, it should go back to the planning board. And the question of substantial it's hard to define. It usually means whether or not someone would have expected that sort of change to possibly have occurred, and otherwise, essentially whether they would have shown up to say something about that sort of change. I think these changes are probably within the realm that are probably okay. However, as always,
Yes,
the
always
least
a
the
however.
least risky route is to send it back, but you may be willing to accept the risk on these small changes that you're discussing. I think the overall concept of a produce stand is not changing, and the changes are not dramatic in how they would operate.
Okay. Thanks, Ben.
And I'll just throw in, I think anything we can do to add a little vibrancy to our community is a good thing. I'm sure all of us drive to Duck and Kitty Hawk to go to produce stands there. I think expanding the definition is a good idea, because honey is a good example. It really is not a fruit, vegetable, or a plant. So I think we need to expand that. A lot of produce stands sell jams and jellies and that sort of thing. So I'd like to see that in there. And as far as striking K, I guess I kind of agree with Matt. I think the market will dictate whether this is going to be completely seasonal or there's a demand for something year-round. I think the Wanchese market operates pretty much year-round. So I would unless it becomes a problem, I don't see why we would limit something that I think the market will dictate. People aren't going to keep it open if there aren't any customers, but if there are customers and they're selling something that people want, why curtail it?
Well, I guess my kind of thought, we're not asking, Starbucks to close,
Right?
from April to November. I mean, what's the difference? I mean,
There
it's
you
a
go.
commercial enterprise one way or the other.
And it's quite possible that the property owner will dictate
Yeah.
how long they want somebody out there doing their
That's
thing.
exactly
Well,
right.
So let them, instead of us dictating, let the owner of the property make that decision with whoever wants to come out and do the thing.
Are we saying then we leave the property owner dictate whether
No,
the
we're just gonna
structure?
strike L altogether. Do,
L or,
sorry,
K.
is it
Okay.
K? Sorry.
but in there was, are we allow, is the property owner going to go determine if the structure remains there in the off-season? Because we were,
Well, if they're
Going to
closed for a
remove it.
partial bit of the season, is it going to sit there vacant?
I mean, the two that I'm aware of, they sit there vacant, they're not taken down,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which
I don't think I have an initial problem.
I don't have a problem with it, but
I can see.
it's in here.
Well,
a
again,
home
it's
for
the,
vagrants.
But if we strike it, it's a done.
it's the permission of the property owner.
Yeah.
They would be the ultimate decider about what the potential vendor would be subject to. So if we strike it out of our ordinance, then it's up to the property owner to tell whoever's leasing it from them
And
what they want.
just to ask Wes a question, I mean, if it's presenting a safety hazard or, site of crime or something, I mean, there's other ordinances that can be enacted, correct? Enforcement.
It would be subject to fire code, building code,
Yeah.
nuisance ordinance, any of those things. If it grows to that level, then yes, we can enforce the ordinance to make sure that it's brought into compliance.
But if they just don't want to be, I mean, there's restaurants that are closed.
Yeah.
For seasonal purposes.
Right.
Break it down and take the signage down. I don't know. I just see it's commercial enterprise. Let's treat it the same as the other business.
Yeah.
I'm good with
Okay.
that.
All right, so we landed on, let's see,
Striking K.
striking K altogether. And in 11, we're going to say the retail sale of fruits, vegetables, plants, and agricultural products. Do you want to put the word horticultural in?
I just like, just say the retail sale of agricultural and horticultural products.
Okay, retail sale of
And that's
agricultural
lifted directly from Currituck County.
Agriculture.
and horticultural products. Okay.
Maybe Morris Farm Market will have a satellite.
Subject to the following requirements, we're adding under D,
Department
Dare
of
County Health Department, and the Department of Agriculture, or
Agriculture.
words to that effect. Department of Agriculture and Dare County Health Department requirements is probably how it should read.
Dare County Health Department and Department of Agriculture requirements.
Yeah, so some version of that.
Mayor, may I make one suggestion?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
I want to hear Wes's suggestion.
Should there be consideration given also to saying agricultural food products? Chief Cole mentioned, Chief Cole brought up a question saying, would that allow hemp or other things that are not
Well,
edible?
what about, but sometimes they'll sell herbs that they've grown, rosemary, sage,
Mhm.
whatever.
That's edible.
Are we saying that's edible?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
CBD might be edible too.
Well,
There's
Food-
other
food
things that are-
product,
that
I
are
would
not
say
necessarily edible that I
I
wouldn't
would-
want to preclude them from being able to sell though.
I would say CBD and hemp are not food products. But I'm not an expert on the subject, but
Well, what is your interpretation?
Or there's like some kind of aromatherapy, candle made from beeswax. I just, less regulation is my take. I mean, if they start selling CBD, we can have an ordinance that says they can't sell, it's, I don't know.
It's a suggestion. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
if it becomes a problem, we can come back and change it again, but Chief Cole asked a question, brought up the point, so I
Because
figured.
in prohibitive uses, you've got smoke and vapor shops.
Mhm.
I mean, it's all threading the line with the CBD business because
Yeah.
there are edibles, there are things that are creams and all kinds of crap. So it's, excuse my language.
Okay.
Yep.
But I think if it's really becoming an issue, I think we have a means to deal with it separately from our pleasant little family produce stand.
Understood.
Okay.
So we
Just
make
wanted to
any
bring it
change
up.
there, or is that, or are we going to leave it as it's written?
The reason I like, well, since I started all this nonsense by taking it out of prohibited uses, my vision is something similar to the stands that Currituck County has. So I like Currituck County's definition. It's agricultural and horticultural products.
I think we're okay with leaving it that way. And then if there is a problem, we can always address it.
And add to the prohibited of smoke and vapor and
Yeah.
whatever else we need to.
Whatever else Chief Cole wants us to add.
Don't know if he wants to add all that, but.
Yes, sir.
You may or may not be able to apply that to someone who already has a permit. So if they receive a permit under this zoning
Mhm.
provision now, and then you decide you don't like something about what they're doing, zoning is not going to be a mechanism that you're going to be able to adjust it on them without
There's
hurdles.
Now we're getting
to go
really
through.
complicated. There's one of the other towns said something like, subject to the approval of the town manager. That seemed really open-ended. and
Yeah.
vague.
That's more discretion than you want to put.
Yeah.
I mean, that might invalidate the whole thing.
Mhm.
But I guess what I'm getting at is the concept that you can just fix something you don't like with something that's permitted, unless you have some other way to make whatever they're doing unlawful under the police powers and not under zoning, you're probably not going to be able to deal with it.
Aren't
via
they selling
zoning.
CBD at like the Crown or the DP up here? It's like right at the register, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But point taken, you're right. I get it. I stand corrected. But I do think that it's traditional to have horticultural and agricultural products for sale at produce stands. So
Yeah.
I think by just saying that, I think we're okay. But you're right, there's always a risk. So do we need a motion to
We're going through
approve
the
this
changes.
ZTA as amended?
And the amended included striking K.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes. So can I have a motion to approve this ZTA as amended?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We have an amended ZTA. Third, new business number 6, capital project ordinance for beach nourishment.
Page 27.
Cliff?
Thank you. This could be summarized as a check in the box, but for our financing purposes and to be kind of in line with what the auditor is looking for, we're recommending that you approve this capital project ordinance, which puts all the costs associated with the beach nourishment project into one budget ordinance. And so it's going to be amended from time to time, and we can bring just this budget to you, and we can approve it as time goes on with the duration of this project. It's not something we have to do and adopt with each annual budget. So none of these numbers are new to you. This is the project cost broken out into the various line items. And so we're asking you to approve the project ordinance as presented.
Thank you, Cliff. Any questions for Cliff? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the attached capital project ordinance for beach nourishment?
So moved.
Can I
I'll,
have a
I'll second it.
Very good. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Anybody change their mind and want to do public comment now? No. Council business. We're meeting on the 2 weeks from today, January the 18th at 9 a.m. Anybody, Matt, would you like to start us off with some
Words of
council comments?
Words of wisdom.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year 2022.
It's a pleasure to be here with y'all.
Thank you. Leah?
I'll just give you an update from the Tourism Bureau on occupancy collections for the month of October. It was another record month compared to a year ago at 43,787,000. That was up for the month of October, up 6%. Year to date, it's up 35%. And that's about 17 straight months of growth and substantial growth.
Wow.
The food or meal collections was up again, 29,131,584, which equates to October being up 30%, and the current year to date being up 55%. And that is 10 straight months of growth. And some of you may have seen Lee's comments in the Voice where he was linking the tourism boom to COVID, which it probably has. But the problem or the thing that we're all recognizing there is that type of growth is not sustainable. The infrastructure is stretched now. And probably the first half of this year, from what we see, that growth isn't going to slow down and it's still going to stretch our restaurant people, anybody that's providing the service, because we're just not getting the people to do the work. So that is somewhere it's going to adjust. We just don't know where. And while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to give you some reading material.
Oh, good.
It's the Outer Banks
Thank you.
travel guide. This year is pretty good, and it's not, it gives us some ideas where restaurants are, who's there, when they're open for lunch or dinner, and various attractions. And this gets sent out to all the touring crowd in the Northeast and far into Ohio. And so I gave some to Cliff here for the office. So if you need more, why, get a hold of Amy down there and she'll get them to you. But it's a pretty good booklet this year. And that's all I got at this point.
Thanks, Leah. Paula?
The only comment I would have is that would be something good, I think, to add to the retreat would be to some discussion about the sustainability of this growth in tourism. Other than that, I'll just echo Matt as in Happy New Year.
Thank you. So, yeah, it's hard to believe how many months we've been dealing with this virus. It seems like forever. And all I would say is, it's going to be with us for a little while longer, and we're going to have to keep on keeping on. So stay safe. I wish you all a happy, healthy, prosperous 2022. And I thank you for coming out tonight.
And just one other comment. Speaking of the COVID, all 100 counties in the state of North Carolina are red. And we're in Dare County, we're right in there. And there's Dare County Human Health Services just put out a little blurb this afternoon I just got before I came here. And the numbers are going the wrong direction all the way around. So it's here, it's transmittable, even if you're boosted. So be cautious.
Thanks, Leo. Motion to adjourn
So moved.
by consensus. Thank you all.
You having fun yet?